I don't know about you, but I love to learn the path of different successful photographers, people that are crushing it in their market today, and learning where they started and how they got to where they are today. So, if that's of interest to you and you want to listen to one of the biggest and best up and coming equine photographers for both private clients and commercial stuff, well, take a listen to this great conversation that I had with Cassidy from Cassidy Brooke Photography. I'm Nicole Begley, a zoological animal trainer turned pet and family photographer. Back in 2010, I embarked on my own adventure in photography, transforming a bootstrapping startup into a thriving six-figure business by 2012. Since then, my mission has been to empower photographers like you, sharing the knowledge and strategies that have helped me help thousands of photographers build their own profitable businesses. I believe that achieving $2,000 to $3,000 sales is your fastest route to six-figure businesses, that any technically proficient photographer can consistently hit four-figure sales, and no matter if you want photography to be your full-time passion or a part-time pursuit, profitability is possible. If you're a portrait photographer aspiring to craft a business that aligns perfectly with the life you envision, then you're in exactly the right place. With over 350,000 downloads, welcome to the Freedom Focus Photography Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Freedom Focus Photography Podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Begley, and today I have one of my local neighbors that I'm so excited to have on the podcast. I have Cassidy from Cassidy Brooke Photography. She's an equine photographer right here in Charlotte, and we've been meaning to connect for quite some time, and life. So, Cassidy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I am super excited to be here, and it's very strange to be on the other side of the microphone.
Yeah.
It's weird to be the one being interviewed, but I'm excited for it.
Awesome. That is fantastic. Yeah, I can't wait. So you are an equine photographer here based in Charlotte. But oh my gosh, you're so lucky you end up spending some time in Florida in the winter and all these fun things. We'll talk about that in a bit. But can you take us back to the very beginning? When did you get into photography? When did you start this business? How long ago was that? What did that look like?
Yeah, wow. You know what? I haven't thought about this in a hot minute, but I will dive back into the beginning stages. So I'd say, a bit of an unconventional journey to this point, because I know so many people who are equine photographers and they're like, oh, I always had a camera in my hand. And, when I was a teenager, I was at the barn taking pictures and I just always loved photography, or maybe went to college for it. And to be honest, that wasn't me at all. I mean, I'd had cameras randomly growing up, but it wasn't anything I even considered to be a profession, truly. I had a corporate job. I was sitting at my desk one day and I'd been there for almost a year. And prior to that, I had worked in vets' offices, small animal, but I thought I was going to be a vet. And then when that didn't pan out, I worked as like a tech and receptionist in vets' offices, got totally burnt out on that. So I ended up in this corporate job, which was essentially like an insurance agency. And I sat in, I'm not even kidding. Like, when you picture like a depressing corporate office, that is where I worked. Everything was completely gray. I couldn't see a window from where I was sitting. Like,
Oh
I
my
had
God.
a gray cubicle that was basically, it felt like a prison cell. So I'm sitting in my office one day and I looked down at my Apple Watch and my heart rate, I'm not even kidding you, was like almost 200. And I'm healthy at this point. I'm
Yeah.
in my mid 20s. I'm very healthy. And I'm like, oh my God, I am going to be the person who has a heart attack in the office one day, because I was completely miserable. I hated staring at Excel spreadsheets. I hated the work I was doing. I would come home and cry every night. So I'm sitting in my office that day and I text my husband and I just kind of out of the blue was like, I think I'm going to quit my job today. And he was like, okay, good luck. And I'm like, that feels like enough permission for me. So that day, kind of without a thought, I got up, went to my boss's office and gave my 2 weeks notice, truly having no idea what I was going to do. At this point, I had a $400 camera that I got on sale at Costco. It was a Nikon D3300 with like an 18 to 55 millimeter lens, completely wrong for shooting horses. I had not even the slightest idea of how to use it. Like, I was using it completely in automatic. I would take it to the barn with me and just randomly take pictures of the horses in the pasture or a friend riding. But it's not like, oh, I already had these skills and was like ready
Right.
to go and ready to start my business. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I knew I had to get out of that job. So I ran out my 2 weeks notice. And honestly, that I was kind of just working odd jobs, working at Barnes, helped at my sister's local bakery, and I had this camera. I just kind of was playing with it. And I was working with a friend at the time who was a dressage trainer. And I was like, let's just like, let me try some black backgrounds. And I did those. They were pretty terrible when I look at them now. But that's truly what sparked like this entire career path for me. And even then, that was 2017 or 2018 when I first got started. And even as it started to kind of progress and I was booking, slight paid shoots, like making like $100 instead of doing everything for free,
Yep.
I even at that point, I was still like, okay, if I want to actually make a career out of this, I'm going to have to become a wedding photographer because I had this in my head. That's the only way to make money in the photography industry. Either do like super high fashion type of stuff or be a wedding photographer. So honestly, for like the first year, it was kind of just, oh, this is what I'm going to do until I figure out what I'm going to do.
Really want to
And
do.
yeah,
Yeah.
and now, I mean, almost 7 years later, I'm still doing it. So
Oh my gosh.
that's
It's
kind of been the
amazing.
journey.
I feel like our journeys are very similar. Except I left a career that I loved, but where I was working, so I was in the zoo industry for 13 years, absolutely loved it. But I was, in Pittsburgh at the National Aviary at the time. The, management of it, I was just like kind of burn out with that middle management piece of it. And I knew there was going to be something else, but I was more attracted to, oh, I want to run my own business. Hmm, I kind of like taking photos, sort of, I suppose. Like, oh, okay. No idea what I was doing. And then at the same time thought, okay, I guess I can't photograph dogs or animals or horses. So I guess I'll do families and I'll just encourage them to bring their dogs or maybe some high school seniors with their horses. Um, so like the same journey.
It's funny, I feel like that's such a common and misconception, I guess, in the industry that
Yeah.
really the only way to make money in it is to either be doing like, family mini sessions all day,
Yeah.
every day, or be a wedding photographer. I feel like it's not talked about much that this is even something that's really viable to be an actual career that could replace a corporate salary.
Yeah, I think it's gotten a little bit better, but oh my gosh, to your point, I used to go to like industry events like Imaging or WPPI like around 2015, 2016. It's getting a little bit more acceptable now. But I would have so many people just straight up scoff at me of like, you can't make a living with that. You can't just photograph dogs. Who's going to pay for that? I'm like, dude, my dog clients pay more than your wedding, I bet. So
Yeah.
who's laughing now?
Yeah, I thought it was really funny. Like a few times when I first started to actually start to travel and take pictures, and do it on a bigger scale, I guess. And I would
Yeah.
check into the hotel and they'd be like, "Oh, are you here for work?" And I would say yes. And of course, then they're like, "Oh, what do you do?" I'd say I'm a photographer. And instantly it's like, "Oh, are you doing a wedding here?" And
Yeah,
the
right.
reaction on people's faces when I'm like, "No, I'm here to take pictures of horses." They're like, "Okay, that's cute." that's there's no way that's a
Exactly.
job, but I love that for you.
Oh my gosh, yeah. No, still to this day. That's what I keep on telling people too, because everyone's like, because the equine photography space is getting more and more crowded, as is the pet photography space, as more and more people realize how awesome it is. I mean, rightfully so. But so many people that have been in it start to get this like little bit of scarcity, like, oh my gosh, too many people coming in. There's not going to be enough clients. Then there's two ways to look at it. Like the scarcity way of, oh my gosh, there's more people coming in. There's not going to be enough clients for me. But I like to look at it as, hey, all these other people out here entering the space are just marketing for dog photography and equine photography to be a thing. So then more people know it's a thing and more people Google and they're doing my marketing for me, which is amazing because I have good SEO and I have great work and people find me and then they're going to book me. So there's definitely different ways I think to look at that and I think that would serve everyone. And until you get to the point where people don't react the way that the hotel people do, like, wait, what? Or when I say the same thing, like, I photograph dogs. They're like, what? Dogs? Like only dogs? I'm like, what? And their owners, but yes, dogs. And until people stop having that reaction every time I tell them what I do, it is not saturated.
Yeah. And on the flip side of it, with social media, and I mean, I do a ton of work with equestrian brands, a ton of commercial work. With the rise of social media, there is this constant need for new content. So, not so much on the portrait side, although even that, people do want to have cute pictures with their horse every year to post on Instagram. But
Yep.
there is this, I mean, social media is 24/7, right? We've got to have a reel to post every day. All of these brands that I'm working with, and I only see that continuing to expand. So I don't
Mhm.
even think of it as like, oh, this market is so saturated, because I still see brands who desperately need photographers or videographers that they can work with. And I think although the market, yes, it is, or although yes, there are more and more photographers entering the space, I think there's an even bigger growing need for brands and the
Mhm.
commercial side of things, that constant need for fresh content.
Yeah, oh my gosh, 100%. I don't know what the number is, but it's many billions of like the pet industry and the equine industry, and they just both keep on growing. And yeah, to your point of how people are marketing now, it's harder than ever to reach potential clients as any brand. And so when they can have that, those engaging reels and like bring in entertainment pieces that get people to follow and interact and beautiful video, like they don't know how to do that unless they hire someone internally, and usually they don't, so they need us.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. All right, so you started 2017ish,
17, 2018. Yeah.
2018ish. Okay, and so you started kind of taking pictures of horses. Kind of what was next? How did it evolve into like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna make this an actual business and like start raising my prices?
Yeah. I wish I could say I had some grand plan and had it all mapped out, but honestly, I feel like it just kept coming to me. And
Yeah.
I've always really loved marketing and social media. And even when I was at my corporate job, I was like listening to YouTube videos while I was getting my work done, all about marketing and social media. So I think that was kind of the thing that led to my success, was that I think a lot of people love taking pictures, and so they go into it as like, this job is just going to be taking pictures. And that is such a small piece of what being a photographer actually is. I know you know that better than anyone. Like, the amount of time I'm physically like taking picture or video is so small, like such a
Right.
fraction of a percentage of what I'm doing. And I think because I really loved the marketing side and social media, it was just kind of natural for me to want to post what I was doing and find, what was trending and how to get more eyes on my stuff. So I just, it was like that first year, it kind of occurred to me that this could maybe be a real business. Like, it kept going. And I always had this idea that I was going to work with equestrian brands, and I cannot like connect where that came from. I have no idea why I always had this desire. And I remember like still literally using that $400 camera, no idea what I was doing with it. And I emailed and Instagram DM'd probably hundreds of brands and was just like, "Hey, I'm a photographer. I'd love to take some pictures for you for free to add to my portfolio." And I actually, considering how terrible my work was at the time and how much I had no idea what I was doing, people actually responded back, and I got stuff sent to me, and I started building that commercial portfolio and making connections with brands. And I feel like that was a huge piece of it too, was just my willingness to do stuff that scared myself
Mhm.
and just reach out to people, making those connections. I think it's easy, especially when you're starting out, to just want to sit quietly in your space and hope that the whole, if you build it, they will come kind of
Mhm.
mentality works, which is not the case. I don't believe in any
Mm-mm.
business. So I
No.
think that, that piece of really loving marketing and my willingness to just like reach out to people. When I look back on it now, I'm like, dang, I was pretty like bold to just be emailing brands and stuff, having no idea what I was doing. So it kind of evolved from that. I think, now probably about 90% of what I do is working with equestrian brands. I do a little bit of social media management and really a lot on the marketing side and not even just
Mhm.
photography. But yeah, I wish I could say I had this plan and it all just went exactly like it did, but I truly think I never quit. I kept going.
Yeah.
Even there were plenty of times like I had in the first 2 years I'd grown an Instagram account to have like 15,000 followers. I had a Facebook page and overnight all of that was hacked and completely deleted and
Oh,
I never got it back. And in that moment, I remember like the few days after that being like, I'm gonna quit. I'm gonna go back and
yeah.
get a corporate
Like, this
job.
is
I
a
can't.
sign, forget it, I
Yes,
can't build this again. Like, yeah.
exactly. And I really thought, I'm like, oh my God, it's over. Like, what am I even gonna do? And but I think the thing that's made me successful in this so much is just I kept going. I didn't quit. Even after I lost that account, I just, you pick yourself up and you keep going.
I love that. There's so many like little nuggets of mindset stuff in there from the reaching out to people really before you are ready of just like, all right, let's get this done. And I always tell my students too, like, just get people in front of your lens, get dogs in front of your lens, get horses in front of your lens, like just start shooting and keep shooting. And there's a like kind of insidious little thing that I'm sure that you've heard many people say too, where it's like, can't do anything for free. So I think that people have this voice in their head, like you when you were starting out, when you're like just reaching out to all these brands and saying, "Hey, I'd like to build a portfolio," and offering to do something for them that's complimentary or free. Like they think that that's just like absolutely wrong, and the photography police are going to come and arrest them and like put them in jail. And
Yeah.
um, so how did you kind of start to, I guess, move from that free to like, when did you say, all right, no more working for free? Like, were you doing some upsells from those at the beginning? Do you just promise them like one or two images? Like, how did you start to make that transition?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, I was just doing stuff for free. I wasn't even really trying to do upsells. And honestly, at this point, I had sort of, I guess my like the portrait side of my business had
Uh-huh.
really been established to where I was making enough. Like my corporate job wasn't amazing. It's not like I had to replace this $500,000 a year salary. Like
Right.
I'd only been there for a year. It was like I didn't need to make an insane amount of money to stay out of the corporate office. So
Yep.
I had built up the portrait side and made, I think there's just so much to making connections with real human beings. Like the amount of clients that I've gotten from, someone I used to board my own horse with, or someone I
Mhm.
was friends with, or a previous client, like that had helped build up my portrait client business so much that that was, I wouldn't say like established to where it was just easy and everything was fine, but I was almost doing the working with brands and stuff more as I hate to say like influencer, but I was honestly in a lot of the photos. My
Mhm.
husband is amazing and although not a photographer was very willing and would come out and take pictures of me, and that was kind of how I got my foot in the door with a lot of brands, was almost more as like the influencer side of things where
Mhm.
I had, my that first Instagram account that had like 15,000 followers. I used to talk a lot about my story on that and just, being a relatable horse girl essentially. So that was kind of how I got my foot in the door, but the reality is that nobody took it seriously as like an influencer,
Yeah.
if you have millions of followers, sure, or even hundreds of thousands in a different space, I do think that there's ways that you can make real money as an influencer.
Mhm.
But in the equestrian world with 15,000 followers, the likelihood that you're going to be able to be an influencer and make a full-time salary is
Right.
unlikely at best. I'd say maybe it's
Yeah.
gotten a little bit better now where brands will pay you a little bit, but I was doing it essentially in exchange for the products. And for a while, that was super fun and exciting. I grew up with a single mom with 4 kids who had to work multiple jobs. So I had like nothing when it came to horses growing up. I had to work
Yeah.
for everything. So it was like, wow, I'm getting free riding clothes and free stuff for my horse. So it was really exciting to me. And then as we're talking, I'm kind of putting all the pieces together because I've truly never thought about this. But when I lost that Instagram account, it was kind of like that influencer side essentially died with that
Yeah.
account, which was truly the biggest blessing in disguise, because I don't know if that wouldn't have happened, I don't know if I ever would have taken it from being like the cute little influencer girly to being like, oh, I'm a photographer and I work with equestrian brands to create content and marketing material.
Yeah.
So truly, even though that felt like the end of the world and devastating, it was the biggest blessing in disguise to lose that account. So I'd say that shift kind of happened to where I was like, okay, I'm doing, I'm making money with the portrait sessions, and now I'm doing like, I was doing a ton of work on the influencer side. And when that account got lost, I was like, okay, I don't want to keep doing that all for
Mhm.
free. So then the brands that I had already worked with, I built a lot of relationships up, and I basically reached out to everyone. And when I tell you, I was like shaking and sweating, so nervous to just reach out to them and be like, hey, unfortunately, I can no longer do work for free. I'm
Yeah.
happy to continue working with you. And I mean, I sent over a pricing sheet, and I think it was like $200 to $500. So by no means was I
Yeah.
like then asking them for 20 grand. And everybody was like, yeah, we'd love to keep working with you. And a lot of those brands I still work with to this day, like 5 years later, in a much bigger capacity. So like you said, with this notion that we're not allowed to do work for free.
Mhm.
Honestly, I would not be where I am today if I hadn't done so much work for free, because I
Yeah.
did build up so many relationships and built up that portfolio. And I had photographers who did want to put me in photography jail for posting that I
Uh-huh.
was, looking to build my portfolio. And another blessing was that I was very much raised to not that I don't care what people think, but like if somebody says like, hey, you shouldn't be doing this, it's probably going to make me want to do it even more. So when these, old school photographers were like, I can't believe it, you're ruining the industry, you're
Uh-huh.
devaluing it, I was kind of like, oh, now you're making me want to do it even more. I'm going to do even more free photo shoots.
Oh, yeah, no, I love it. And I think it just forces us, as it should, to make sure we're getting clear of like, all right, what am I actually bringing to these brands? What am I bringing to my clients that is different than somebody that is working for free, or maybe they're getting started in the portrait space, they're doing low cost, all inclusive, that we're offering something totally different. So if you look at the private client space, um, me offering custom wall art, custom albums, full service, products that they can't buy on the consumer market is not, it's apples and oranges to somebody that's getting started doing low cost, all inclusive. I think the most important piece, if you guys are at that kind of early stage of working for free to build a portfolio, doing model calls, doing that low cost, all inclusive, is just knowing that you can't stay there, that's unsustainable in the long term. But I think it's a great strategy to bootstrap your way up to starting to serve clients at a higher level.
Yeah, I
Um,
totally agree. And I think
yeah.
honestly, I would not have worked for free for like a lot of people that I mentor and coach now, I'm like, you should not work for free for nearly as long as I did. But when I quit my corporate job, I had no idea what I was doing. It's
Yeah.
not like if I had already had this base and really knew how to use my camera, knew how to work with light and pose people and horses, then I would have jumped into getting paid, I think, a lot sooner. But because I was essentially learning everything during those shoots, it's like
Mhm.
I had to do these for like no one was gonna pay me when I had no idea what I was doing. So I say, all of that I did do a ton of free stuff. But if you're a photographer and you already are, doing a great job taking photos and you really know how to use your camera, then no, I don't think you need to just constantly be doing stuff for free
Yeah.
for, as long as I did. I don't actually recommend doing it as long as I did.
It's all good. I think part of it though is like you were on the journey, because I look back at my story too, and I'm just like, wow, how did I get here? This was not like what I set out to do. Like I did not like leave my zoo world job to become a photographer to be like, one day I'm going to teach other photographers, I'm going to have a nonprofit, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. None of that was on the radar at all. Period. It was straight up, all right, I need to like find a way to make like $40,000 a year. like like and photography seems fun, and it's flexible that I can do it on my time. I actually thought about being a dog trainer too, because I was always training animals in the zoo world. So I'm well versed in operant conditioning and training. But then I thought about like working with a dog training client and like coming back the next week and then being like, why is my dog still doing this? And me saying, have you done their homework? And them saying no. I'm like, I can't, I'm out. Nope. Cannot handle that. Photography it is.
Yeah, yeah, that would add a different level of stress than like an 1 hour portrait session where if their dog is misbehaving, that's their problem to deal with at home.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I had that I had a dog session. Oh gosh, this was in Pittsburgh years ago. It was like in the winter time. They wanted a snow session. We were getting to the end of the season. The owner had like knee surgery, so they couldn't really come out and help. It was going to be the middle of the day, which in Pittsburgh in the middle of the day in February is usually fine because it's usually like really thick clouds. But no, blue sky, not a cloud in the sky, gorgeous. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna need an assistant because I need a light and I just need someone to help me with this. And so I brought someone that does like toddlers, newborns, and she's holding my light and she's helping me and she was great. And at the end of the session, she's like, I don't know how you have the patience for this. I'm like, I don't know how you photograph babies. So even.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I cannot imagine. I've taken pictures of one baby and it was my niece and I was like, "You know what? This was too much for me. I will take a horse misbehaving over how fragile a newborn baby is any day."
Uh-huh. Oh my gosh. And yeah, like, well, we have to wait till they go to sleep. How long does that take? What is going on? And I had 2 kids and I'm like, "Oh no, no, I don't do babies."
No, same. Yeah, me either. Not for me.
That's so funny. All right. I want to dive into a little bit about kind of the social media piece of this because I feel like there are, gosh, 2 camps in photographers. There's definitely a whole camp of people that are like, I hate it. I don't want to touch it. I just don't want to be part of it. And then there's another camp that's like, oh, okay, maybe I do kind of like it, but oh, I don't know. Like, but I think generally, if I think about most of my people and pet photographers tend to be a little bit more introverted and maybe don't want to put themselves out there on social media. So, can you have like a fun social media account where maybe you're not like, oh, look, this is what I had for dinner? You know, all the things. Like, how do you kind of manage your social account without it letting it overtake your life?
Yeah. To that I will say I am very much an introvert. If I did not have the business I have, I would have no social media. I Everyone is always shocked by that because I have a big Instagram account and manage a lot of Instagram accounts. But yeah, I'm honestly with the people who are like, "Hey, I kind of hate social media," because
Yeah.
yes, I would not have any desire to be on it if it wasn't for my business, although I have made many great friends and so many amazing connections. But honestly, I think when I was starting out in this, I was down at my grandparents' house in Florida. I had gone down to do some shoots and they were like, "How are you down here doing photo shoots? Like, how did you meet these people? How did you book these clients?" And I
It's
was
the
like, "Oh,
internet. It's fine, grandma.
yeah." I'm like, "Oh, through Instagram." And they were really just like, and I mean, they had social media. Like my grandma has Instagram and she's one of
Yeah.
my biggest fans. She likes all my things. So
I
thanks, shout
love it.
out grandma. But they were really like blown away that I had made this business and made it work by using social media. So although I do love like marketing and all of that good stuff, that moment where they were like, "Wow, that's so cool that you get to do this." It really like hit with me that, oh my gosh, if I had been born, you know, 50, 60, 70 years before, I wouldn't even have the opportunities that I have now. So instead of thinking of social media as this burden and something I have to do, I'm like, wow, how lucky are we that we were born in a time where we get this opportunity, because that that's not the case for so many people before us. They didn't have this, and to be an equine photographer and get to like travel all over and work with equestrian brands, I would have never had a shot doing this if it wasn't for Instagram. So all of that to say, I don't think you have to be sharing everything about your life. I think that it's really important to only share what you're comfortable with. I do strongly encourage people to have their face on their social media because, the reality is in this, there's a very low cost of entry now, right? You can get a
Mhm.
pretty nice camera for very little money. You can get Lightroom for very inexpensive. We're all sort of using similar equipment, editing similar. The really big difference between you and every other photographer is you. That's
Mhm.
that's the one thing that nobody else can do is be you. So that's why I have so much infused myself into my business. And I know plenty of photographers who are super successful and have big social media accounts, and I don't even know what they look like because they've never posted. So it's not like this is the only way, but I've just found that being able to show up and even just post like a quick clip of me riding my horse, or if you're just doing dog photography, like talking about how you love your dog, a clip of you walking your dog. It doesn't have
Mhm.
to be like you're sharing every meal and every thought you have on social media by any means, but just sharing little bits of yourself. Like when I had that first social media account where I did think of myself more as like an influencer, and I do hate that term, I shared a lot, like a
Yeah.
lot of information about myself. I talked a lot about how I had gone through horrible anxiety and panic attacks that were crippling, and I was in the emergency room all the time. And at this point, I had gotten through that, and I loved to talk about that and share about that. So I connected with a lot of people over that. But once that Instagram account was gone, so we're kind of all of those, that kind of oversharing. Now I'd say
Yeah.
I focus much more on, I think about who my target audience is, which is going to be either horse girls, a girl who just is absolutely obsessed with her horse, loves it so much she can't wait to take pictures with it, and equestrian brands. So
Mhm.
making myself relatable and showing up like, hey, I am a horse person. Here's my horse. I love my horse. Here's what I'm doing today. If I'm at a horse show, like here's little clips of me at the show. Here's me with, friends at the barn. That's really the only part of my life that I'm even sharing on social media anymore. Most people
Yeah.
are shocked when they find out my husband exists. Occasionally he'll make an appearance. I don't even really share my dogs. I don't share anything about my family. It's
Yeah.
it's very much just like this one little sliver that makes me super relatable to my target audience. Like it's
Mhm.
not sharing every piece of my life. And I think that's something that, anyone can really do, is share that little bit that makes you super connected to your audience.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think you can tell that you're doing it well when people, reach out to you. For instance, like people know that I've got a horse, big bay geldings unite. Woohoo. I
With
got
you?
my horse. I love my chocolate martinis. I have a dog and I like to travel. And so like those things come up and they're like, "Hi, Nicole." And they know I have a family, but yeah, I don't post a ton of it. I've actually like stopped posting pictures of like any of my kids' faces. I'm like, yeah, the world's too crazy with AI and all that insanity. Um, but yeah, it's just like these little bits. So then it makes you so much more relatable. And I think so many people are scared to be like authentic who they are in fear that it might turn some people off. But I think those people were never going to hire you anyway. And then the people that connect with you are going to love you that much more. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And if
don't be
you
afraid of it.
posting a clip with your dog makes somebody not want to book you, like that was never your client, like you didn't want to
Yeah.
work with them anyways. And I think anytime you get into a situation where, in any facet of business, where you're like, I don't want to do this because then I might scare some people away, you
Mhm.
are only limiting yourself. The more that you're willing to be like, I want to talk to my people, the people who
Mhm.
I truly want to work with, you're only going to grow from that. I've never seen a case where that's going to really shut your business down or slow it down.
Yeah.
The more you can talk to the type of client that you really want to work with,
Mhm.
the better off you're going to be, the more it's going to grow, the more those people are going to be able to find you.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's the case even if it's slightly polarizing. Like for instance, I have a nonprofit for environmental stuff. And so like that's a big piece of it. So if you're talking about like, hey, I posted like, hey, my reusable water bottle and no plastic and this and that, and people, if that makes them upset, they're not my client. Same thing with, people that maybe are really passionate about serving the LGBTQ community. Like be proud of that. The people that aren't going to accept that are not going to be your right client anyway. So, like, just lean into the things that make you you and the things that are important to you. And I think that just galvanizes your brand so much more for the people that agree with you, that are like, oh my gosh, this is my person. They have the same values that I do. That's one way to start to make that differentiate you from a sea of other people is, yeah, just being true to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the more that you can lean into the things, like you said, that make you you, not only is it going to attract the right type of people who are going to connect with you, but it's going to make you enjoy your work more. And when
Hmm.
circling back thinking about Instagram, when it's like you're sharing the stuff that really resonates with you and that you want to connect with people over, it's not going to feel like this huge burden of a task to make that post because it's something that you're passionate about anyways.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that probably keeps people, at least for me, would keep me from posting was like, what do I post? Is that the best thing? What should I post? And so, like, what if there was no should, right? If it was just like, what can I post today? What can I share today? And that there wasn't a right or wrong, and it was just like, just do something, because I think we get this analysis paralysis of we want it to be right, and there's so much information, less now, but it used to be like your feed has to be perfectly curated in this way, and if your feed doesn't look that way, people are leaving, and if this isn't here and that isn't there, then your Instagram, you might as well not even do it. So I think there's so much of all that that people are just like, I don't even know, and it changes every week. So do you have advice for them?
Oh, so much advice. First of all, I find that the more social media strategists and Instagram experts that I follow, the
Uh-huh.
more I'm like, oh my God, none of y'all know anything about what you're talking about. You're just throwing stuff at the wall. And I would say unfollow that sort of thing. I follow maybe like one person who's like an Instagram expert, and really because his content is entertaining, not because I'm
Yeah.
looking for what the hottest strategy is. And I think one of the biggest like blessings that I've given myself with Instagram, because when I used to go to make a post, I would very much be like, okay, what's going to get the most views? What's going to get the most likes? What's going to gain the most followers? And when I switched my mindset from that to, if nobody likes this, well, I'm always, my sisters and my grandma follow me. So I'll probably get like at least 3 likes on this post. But if they're the only 3 people who like this post, well, I still be proud that it's there. And whether it's a ridiculous TikTok I made with one of my best friends at the barn, or a portrait I took, or a reel with video clips I just took for a brand, regardless of what type of post it is, I'm like, if nobody cares about this, if nobody likes this, if the algorithm is like, shut it down, this is
Yeah.
horrible, will I still be proud that it's there? And will I still want it to like show up on my feed? And if I can say yes to that, then I hit posts. Like that's my only guidelines for posting on my account, because I do kind of infuse a little bit of everything, whether it's portrait work or myself in it,
Yeah.
or brand work, whatever it is, I do a little bit of all of it. And I think the reality is there's no perfect way. There's nothing that's going to be the most ideal. And I don't think anyone's ever grown a big Instagram account from sitting around thinking about how to grow the account, or sitting around thinking about what's the most perfect thing they could post today. Just post something. Like
Yeah.
you don't have to wait for that, picture or that video that you think is going to get a million views. Just post the picture you took yesterday, or go and take a picture of your own dog or horse in the backyard or in the pasture and post
Yeah.
that. Just I think so much of it is making it a habit and just being okay doing it. And I mean, every social media account started at 0. My
Yep.
Instagram following started at 0, and I posted and quite literally nobody liked it. And if you're not okay with that, then you'll never get to the point where you do have a bigger following and are getting more leads and potential clients from that account.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So good. So good. Well, before we wrap up, this has been a great conversation, but do you have any kind of last minute advice for, anyone out there that's wanting to grow their business, whether pets or equine? Like, what advice do you have for aspiring photographers?
Yeah, I think another thing that really benefited me is that because I had that horrible anxiety and crippling panic attacks, I had learned to work on my mindset and personal development type of stuff. And I feel like, as photographers, it's easy to be like, okay, we just need to focus on learning how to be better at photography, use your camera better, know how to use light better, pose people, market yourself better. But the reality is, if you are not growing as a human and you are not trying to develop yourself, your business will always be limited to what you can handle. And I think that's true of every area of it. If you can't handle any sort of rejection, your business is not going to grow because there's always going to be
Mhm.
rejection in this. If you cannot handle someone, saying that your pricing is too high, like that's going to shut you down. So I think something that's very underrated advice that you don't hear a lot in the space of photography is work on yourself, even more
Mhm.
so than you're working on your photography skills or your business skills. Anytime where I feel like my business is really stagnant, I feel like, okay, like I'm not attracting the right people or it's not doing what I want it to. I'm like, oh, you got to go back and work on yourself. Like read the books, listen to the podcasts, really work on you as a human. And that has always translated so much to success in my business. So that would be my, like, if I could only give anyone one piece of advice, it would be work on yourself, work on the personal development side of things.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much, 100%. With pretty much every episode of this podcast. So, so good. Well, you have a podcast too. Tell people where they can find you for that, and then also where they can find you online.
Awesome. Thank you so much. My podcast is the Equine Photography Podcast. Pretty basic. We talk about all things horse girl podcast, everything with photography. I've had some other like business experts on there talking about all things equine photography. So yeah, just Equine Photography Podcast. I have my personal Instagram account is Cassidy_Brooke with two E's. And then I also run the Equine Photography Academy where I teach equine photographers. So that's just Equine Photography Academy on social media. And yeah, that's where they can find me.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for being here with us. It was a great conversation. And I'm sure our paths will cross again.
Yes.
Thanks, Cassidy.
Thank you so much for having me.